sabrosura pa' ti que.
Hello, everyone. This is Pam, de Café con Pam, the bilingual podcast that features Latina and people of the global majority who break barriers, change lives, and make this world a better place. Welcome to episode 360 of Café con Pam. Today, we have a conversation with Elayna Fernandez. Elayna is a 5-time TEDx speaker, best-selling author, internationally acclaimed storyteller, and award-winning mom entrepreneur. As a creator of the 5-step story STORY system, a multiple trauma survivor, and an advocate of safe, inclusive, and trauma-informed leadership, Elayna speaks on global stages, weaving her inspiring stories and teaching storytelling principles to help parents, leaders, and entrepreneurs turn their stories into sustainable income, influence, and impact. For almost 2 decades, she has served as an advisor and story strategist to leading brands and renowned transformational leaders, and has been sponsored by over 500 brands. Her coaching style focuses on helping people feel seen, safe, and supported. She was born and raised in a slum in the Dominican Republic. Elayna has been named one of the top Latina influencers in the U.S. and was recently selected as a woman of influence and one of the 125 most impactful leaders to know worldwide by Success Magazine. She's a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine. She lives in Texas, and she's a single mom of 4 daughters, ages 21, 20, 10, and 4. Listeners, Elayna is one of my favorite people. I have a video of her. It's kind of funny. Dancing. She was very pregnant at the time. And she's dancing and singing a song, Café con Pan. And it's hilarious. She is such a champion. She really is a force. There's no other way to describe Elayna. And I've been wanting to have her at Café con Pan for a long time, pero maybe I was not ready for her incredible story. Maybe you were not ready to hear her incredible story. Entonces, I'm not going to delay this any further. Here's my amazing conversation with Elayna Fernandez, also known as the Positive Mom. Elayna, welcome to Café con Pam. ¿Cómo estás?
Thank you, Pam. Bien. So excited to be here with you. So honored.
So excited. So excited to have you. I'm just so excited. We've talked about this for a long time, about bringing you to Café con Pam, but I do believe that people come to Café con Pam when it's time to come to Café con Pam.
Sí.
So here we are. So the question that we always ask is, what is your heritage?
Yeah, so here's my map right here. I'm from the Dominican Republic. I consider myself an Afro-Latina because I really love to embrace all of my roots and the mixture that entails. And so, yeah, I've been an immigrant since 2001 in the United States. And yeah, really proud to be Dominican.
For sure. Something that I find really fascinating. I've been interviewing people since 2016, you know?
Yes.
More and more, I'm talking to Dominican women, and back in 2016, the Afro-Latina identity was not as accepted. I remember asking someone way back when, are you Afro-Latina? Porque, you know, you notice the hair and there's different things. Pero luego, she was like, no, I'm just Latina. That was back then, right? And so it's multiple people.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious about, and I've actually talked about it with Dominican friends, that there's a lot of erasure. So how did you come to accepting this? And was that something that took time, or was that always I'm Afro-Latina?
Wow, I got chills because you asked me that. Because, coming to the United States was a shock to me because I grew up in a slum. You know this already about me, and I was considered white.
Mm,
And I didn't realize until I came to the United States that I had dark skin.
wow.
And that was a shock. Yeah,
For sure.
because that's when I realized the privilege I had, especially coming from that very impoverished area where, we didn't have our basic children's rights. How
Mm,
I had access to so much more because my hair texture was different, because my skin was lighter, and because my parents made the sacrifices they had to make for me to go to school. But even to be accepted in the school where I went, it was like, she's white. And that's
wow.
exactly, ella es blanquita. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I came here, I realized I'm not. I mean,
Mm.
sometimes they call you rubia, which is güera for you.
See.
And then I realized that there was so much discrimination because of my height, because of my accent, because of my now rebranded brown skin. And I started to embrace, like, okay, I'm Afro Latina. I have this heritage that I haven't really unconsciously embraced before. And it's like, yeah, I started to identify with African American culture and to know, where my hip movement came from.
Mm-hmm.
And even like cultural nuances that were so similar, and to see really that I am, even more African than I feel Spanish, or, I really have very indigenous traditions, and I think maybe quirks about myself, but I am very, very African. And that's kind of how it started. It was through the experiencing the reality of colorism.
And it didn't happen until you got to the US, which is
Yeah,
fascinating.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's wild.
I think that when
Because
you're the privileged one, it's really harder to see it.
totally,
Yeah.
totally. In my case, for example, I somebody once asked me if I identify as indigenous, and I was like, absolutely not. Because I have carried the privilege of my skin color,
Hmm.
my last name, porque in Mexico is very classist,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I have a very Spanish last name, so that gives me privilege.
Hmm.
So its skin tone is in my case my last name, education level as well. And I've also witnessed how indigenous people are treated, and I never experienced that. And so
Exactly.
that I think I need to respect the fact that I haven't suffered that way, if that's
Hmm.
the right term,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so to bring it back to how you started to witness the differences here, and like to quote you, the rebrand of the Afro Latina identity.
Yeah.
Have you, when you go back to the DR, have you talked to your family about it? Is that something that has come up?
Yeah. I mean, it's not something that comes up a lot because we talk more about, how I would say people with darker skin colors or skin tones, and, basically anything that identifies them as obvious, right? Because we
Mm-hmm.
have a picture of what Afro Latina looks like.
Looks like correct.
Exactly. And so for them to feel that I identify this way is kind of like, we don't want to talk about it because you're delusional.
No es cierto. Sí,
Yeah. And
for sure.
and at the same time, in our vernacular, like, it's everywhere how you are branded, just to go back to that term, because of your skin color. So there are so many terms and some of them are considered terms of endearment. And yet
Mm-hmm.
it's like there's a difference between a person and their name and their nickname because of these racist connotations and colorist connotations. So it's really hard to educate your own.
Yes.
And even though I'm definitely always making a comment, because no me quedo calladita nunca, I'm like always
Mm-hmm.
opening my mouth.
Yay.
But I don't think it's something that many people are ready for.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I mean, I think in the US, the conversation is more, there's more, this is where we might get some backlash, but I do believe there's more space for conversation here.
Yeah.
Porque in Latin America, it's still very under the rug. It's still, I think classism is above race
Well,
as far as the,
yeah, and also it's internalized, Pam.
totally.
So it's like,
Exactamente.
you cannot, when you identify in a way and it has affected and eroded your identity, you own it almost like a badge of honor. And so for you to dissociate with that identity, it's so hard. So I think, the fact that it's so internalized and so passed down generationally as a badge of honor when it's trauma. I
Sí.
think that's the key to why there's no awareness or desire for awareness.
Agreed. 100%. So much. We
No,
can
you're
like,
right. 100%.
we can stick in this for like the full hour.
Yeah.
Let's bring it back to your story. So you mentioned you often talk about how you grew up in Islam in Dominican Republic. And I love your TED Talk when you talk about the magazine
Oh.
and how you found it and you were like, ¿qué pasa si aprendemos este idioma? How was your desire to, and it was that like the catalyst to say, oh, there's a different type of life that I could embark on? Because I think one of the things that happen when you exist in an environment is that many times you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so for you, how did you make the decision, because many times it's a decision,
Yeah.
to get out or like to choose a different life?
Well, I think it all started with me watching Candy Candy.
Candy, candy. I remember candy, candy.
Okay, good. Because we didn't have a TV for the longest time, but when we got one, I used to watch Candy Candy and see how candy was treated in Mexico versus how candy was
Mm-hmm.
treated in the United States. And then seeing the life that I had in the Dominican Republic, then we started to get missionaries and volunteers who seemed to have it all. And they were all, gringos or
Mm-hmm.
Canadienses, like people who looked like they had everything. And they all spoke English. They had an accent, they looked a certain way, which explains my marriages. Another story for
another
another time.
another podcast.
Yes. But, a lot of self-discovery has happened between, like the things that I used to consume as a child and how I viewed people that were from a different country. And
Mm-hmm.
that when I don't remember exactly how old I was, but one of my siblings got a sponsor from the United States. And they sent $20 every month. And we received, a portion of that. And I remember, she was able to go to school. We were able to have all of this different, things that we never could afford. And so I associated prosperity and happiness with being from the United States or from a different country where people looked white. They,
Wow.
yeah. And so for me, it was, I knew, and I was privileged to be able to associate with children in the school who had a different lifestyle, but it wasn't like the ones that I saw in media. So the magazine was like that click
Mm.
for me. And it was that moment in which I said, I got it. I found their secret. I know now what makes them different. And, I know exactly now looking back, exactly who threw the magazine in the dump.
No.
Yes.
Who?
Well, it was this family of, Mennonites who lived kind of on the other side. You know how there's a slum and there's the other side.
Right.
And so um we had like this subscription because every month they threw the magazine, and I was eagerly searching for it and finding, what's next, what is the next code that I'm going to find in here. And so yeah, it was more like a game, and I found like how to get to the next level.
That's awesome. So, for listeners' context, if you want to know about this magazine that we're talking about, watch her TED Talk. It's going to be linked in the show notes. So,
Thank you.
definitely go watch that, and then you'll know what magazine we're talking about. I love that.
Yeah.
So, I'm curious because there's also beliefs that get formed based on experiences that we live.
Yeah.
And for someone who grew up in poverty, how does Elayna understand? How did she understand her self worth to say, I'm not supposed to stay there because I deserve more?
Yeah, that's interesting because, since I had, I remember being 5 years old, and actually my fifth TED Talk is about this, which is crazy to say that. But
On a mission.
but I remember being 5 years old and writing that, I died. So I had this,
At 5?
yes, yes. That was my biggest desire. Like I remember just feeling like that would be the best thing that would ever happen to me, where I fantasized that people would finally know that I was important.
Wow.
Yeah. And those beliefs that get formed that you're talking about, they're so insidious because I remember also praying that I would get sick so that I would get attention.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was just starving for recognition, attention, and validation, which I call the three pillars of
Mm,
compassion.
hmm.
And then there was this part of me, though, that knew that there was more to life than this. And so, because of, they call me Cerebrito in town, because I was, very nerdy. um, I got to tutor some of my classmates, and they lived in this, huge houses, and their parents had cars and stores, and it was just like I had this
Access.
reality to see these things, to see that life in the magazine, and to be like, wait, what if instead of dying here, I could actually live this way? And for me, it wasn't so much that I felt worthy. It was just that I had to hang on to something.
Wow.
Yeah. And thankfully, my dad was always my biggest cheerleader. He still is. He's turning 70 in August.
Yay.
He would say, yeah, you can do that. Of course. Like, you're so smart, you're so brilliant, you're so this. So he had a vision for me and of me that was so different from the one I had of myself. And I also had a few teachers who were so validating to me and so supportive and told me that I would go far. And, just those little things that kind of give you like a light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
But I
Right.
lived in the tunnel most of the time. And those thoughts are still present, like they still show up. Actually, one of my poetry books is about that. It's, suicidal thoughts and dark thoughts that just show up. And I no longer entertain for longer periods. I write about them instead. But it wasn't coming from a place like, I'm going to, I deserve this life. It was more like, this would be nice. And this is the one that I want to really, really touch on and highlight and underline. I'm going to prove that I am worthy. It was
Ooh.
more like, I will show you. So it was that feisty spirit
Mm-hmm.
to show the people that told, the people who told me that I was worth nothing, the people who doubted that I could do anything right. It was more, I'm going to show you, and
Mm.
I'm going to have millions, and I'm going to, have people adore me, and all of these kind of sick fantasies. And that all of this anger inside of,
Yes.
and that anger, like, I think all of those thoughts, even though they were toxic,
Mm,
but they kept me alive.
for sure. Who were they?
My family, yeah, people in my family.
Could you say that sometimes when we get those people that are like, they don't believe that you can do it, but it's really that they don't believe that they can do it. So they
Yeah.
project it onto us.
Yes, yes. Well, one of my missions, and this is why I started my blog, is to help people break cycles,
Mm,
and especially moms, because they're so instrumental to a child's life. And so, because I grew up with a traumatized mom, I was a traumatized child.
hmm.
And my children have been traumatized to the extent that I'm traumatized, which is why I'm doing the work. And I've been doing the work from the moment I knew there was something in my belly, right? Because, and it's a lifelong journey. Like, I still see parts of myself that were unhealed in my own children. And,
Yes.
and now I see them, and it's like, I gave you that.
Yeah.
I
Oof.
gave you that.
That's a big awareness.
And it's painful, Pam.
Yeah.
It's painful, but it allows us to understand where people are coming from. Your tias, your mother, your abuelita, the las vecinas, whoever it is that's
Mm,
around you, and told you that story about what it means, like what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a woman in poverty,
yeah.
whatever it is, whatever label they have. And it's the same thing with the racismo that we're talking about. When you have internalized this script, then it just gets handed out to everyone else in your life. So it, that awareness helped me start my blog. So, because I say, when we transform our trauma, we stop transmitting it.
Mm,
And even though I've transmitted some, I mean, I think some of it is inevitable to transmit.
totally.
um, but I know that I have broken many cycles already. And that really fuels me, because it's not only for my children, they're breaking their own cycles for their children, or whoever, whatever kid they choose to have in their life. It's just that awareness. And they were people in society that had a story about who I was, or what happened to me, like, and some things that are so, I think that we've come a long way. Like, for example, I had seizures, and epilepsy was seen as, maybe you were cursed, or there was a demon that possessed you, just like
Right, right,
ignorant
right.
beliefs that get passed on. And it's like you have a neurological problem
Yes.
as a child, and instead of getting that compassion and that care, you get labeled and you get judged and ostracized. So
Mm-hmm.
just things that make us think like, what is someone going through already? Like
Right.
if they're in poverty or have, they're neurodivergent or have an illness or single mom
Mm-hmm.
and or single mom on welfare, single mom, it doesn't matter, homelessness. And it's not enough to be there, but on top of that, you have layers of shame, layers of judgment,
Mm-hmm.
layers of labels, and it's a call for or a cry for compassion.
Yes, for sure. 100%.
Yeah.
One of the things that the tools that how I support people is by working with their inner child. And
Yeah.
so, especially talking about moms, a lot of my clients, they have traumatized moms.
Yeah.
And so, one of the exercises that shifts the perspective to give that compassion is to imagine her inner niña.
See.
Just like, I know she gets on your nerves. I know she says mean things. Think about her inner niña. How did
Mm-hmm.
her mom treat her?
Yeah.
Because she only knows to do what she was told to do.
Yes.
And that alone just, and I do this like every day when I go and like I get someone mean at a restaurant or like, a customer service person that's not so customer servicely. I imagine the inner child and I'm like, oh, you're just a very hurt person.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need more compassion indeed.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that because I think it's key. And this is what, I talk about in my blog all the time because people think like, oh, positive. That means affirmations and everything is beautiful. And to
And
me,
you're like, you don't know what you're getting into.
exactly. Yeah. It's the opposite of being traumatized. It's when you're doing your inner work. That's when you're a positive mom. That's my definition. And one of the things that I realized is that for the longest time, and this is probably why I passed on some of the trauma, um, I tried to be strong for my children and to
Mm,
hide all of these wounds that, and to be kind of delusional, like everything is okay.
the
We're,
model mom.
yes, the ideal mom, I call it, right? And so I didn't cry. I was always happy and playful and patient. And then in my room, all darkness, just thinking like I don't want to wake up tomorrow.
Wow.
And now I have shifted, over time, I started to see they need to know my inner niña.
Mm,
They don't have to imagine it.
they can meet her. Oh,
Yes. You don't have to
oh.
imagine it. And so it creates a lot of compassion,
Mm-hmm.
not only for them toward us, because we can't control that, right? That's none of our business what they do with that information, but for ourselves to give our inner niña a voice and to recognize like you went through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so proud of you. And and I'll say something because I just can't help myself to, it's like we always say, or we often say, oh, I'm so glad this happened to me. I'm grateful that it happened to me because it made me stronger and it made me who I am. And that's just like a pet peeve of mine because
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be grateful for the people who hurt me or for the hurt I went through. I am grateful for her, for little Elayna.
Yes.
I'm grateful for
Yes.
Elayna, Elainita, or Elita, like my
Elita.
dad used to call me, Ela. And so I'm like, oh, Elita, I'm so grateful for you. You're so strong. Like, look at how you survived that. Look at how you wrote that you wanted to die every day in your Bible. And, you're still alive. You're 47 now. Can you believe
Still
it?
here.
You have four daughters. You help people all over the world. Can you believe it? And that's because of you, because you stayed in that, just dark space and decided to make choices, even from a toxic place that you knew
Hmm.
that's what you knew, but you made choices to stay alive and keep going.
I love that.
Like, actually, I just want to take a moment to thank our
Yes.
inner Nina now.
Let's all do that, listeners. Just tune into your inner little person.
Yeah.
Just give them some gratitude. I love this. Mhm. You're so good.
Oh, so are you.
So
Takes
this
one
is
to know.
awesome. It takes, yes, thank you, thank you. I want to talk about that. I mean, you call them toxic, which I agree, but at the same time, I think anger is good.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I think anger is really powerful because sometimes when people they're like, "Oh, I'm so angry," and like I'm like, and that's one of the things that you talk about is like acknowledge the feelings and honor the feelings. And I think
Yep.
I agree 100%. And anger pushes you into action.
Yes. Yes.
Sometimes I tell people you have to get mad, get pissed, because
You
then you're gonna
absolutely
like
do.
make shit happen.
Absolutely. 100%. Like, without my anger, I wouldn't be here. And
Yes.
so the toxicity of it comes from a place of unprocessed anger.
Yes. Yes.
And that's why I write them. That's why I write it out, because that's how I make sense of it. If you like want to do a voice memo, I don't know what works for you, but sometimes we don't have safe spaces to process those painful emotions. And so it is important to find a safe space. I work with people and they destroy pillows. I work with people and they blow on a bag. It doesn't matter what works for you. Usually, just a little hot tip here. If you have a love language, usually your anger language is the same.
Mm.
And so if you're like a physical touch type of person, usually you want to get out your anger in a physical way. For someone like me who is all words of appreciation, big surprise for you, I'm
Shocker.
sure. It hurts more when words are thrown at me.
Mm.
And also, it's more effective for my healing to write it out. And so that's kind of a way how you know how to process your pain is the same way in which you experience love. And so when we process our anger, like I have a breakup journal that I wrote.
Wow.
And one of the exercises is like use all of the bad words and ugly terms and write them about your ex.
Yes. Yeah, because it releases from your body.
Exactly. It's gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's gone. And you're not going to say it to them.
Right.
Like, don't call him.
Right. They don't need to know.
Yes. Don't post it on social, right?
Right.
But like, write it out, turn it into art. I'm going to show you something real quick. Let me see, because this is something that my daughter painted.
Which one?
It was my oldest.
Okay.
That was a long time ago, but she was experiencing bullying at that time. And she's a visual artist. She's so great. And so this is how she
Wow.
externalized her hurt and anger. And you can see in the colors,
Yeah.
you know?
Give me chills.
Yeah, exactly. And so it could be, any way in which you feel that you can get it out there. And then it turns into art, and it could be a reminder of yourself that you're on the other side. I actually, one time, I love art. So, art is such a powerful way to transform our trauma. And actually, art is inside of trauma. You look
Mm.
at the word. I'm a word nerd. And so the thing about our painful emotions is that they are messengers and they're signals of something that needs to shift. And anger is like this is not fair. It usually has to do with justice, which is so needed. And that's, we see it every day, right? And so for us, it's like something is misaligned with our sense of justice, with our values. And so I love it when I feel anger because then
Mm-hmm.
I know what needs to change and I know I need to do something. Like you said, it's a catalyst for action. What a great description. Best I've heard so far. And so and so let's process that anger. Let's meditate on it. What needs to shift? What is bothering me? What is misaligned here? And what positive action can I take? And before you take that positive action, you got to get it out. Like we tell the kids, get the wiggles out. It might
Yes.
be to punch a punching bag or a pillow or, write angry words, whatever that means so that the anger comes out, you process through it, and then you can think clearly. Which
Mm-hmm.
takes me to the toxic action is when you don't process the anger and act from the anger.
Right. Then the action is being fed by the anger instead of,
Yeah. And this is kind of like a highlight phrase here. All feelings are welcome. All
yes.
behaviors are not.
Mm.
That's our mantra in my household, right? Like you can feel in any way, but the behavior from that feeling sometimes isn't welcome.
That's a
Sometimes,
choice.
yeah, exactly. It's only a choice if you take that time to process it.
Agreed 100%. I love this. One of my other favorite emotions, which talking about emotions, I remember one of my teachers, I love words as well.
Yeah.
Um, the etymology of emoción is motion in Latin, and
Mm-hmm.
motion is movement, which to
Yeah.
your point, we need to move through it.
Yes. Yes.
And 100%, we need to feel all of the emotions. And there's like the societal shame and all of the ideas of what would be considered negative emotions that we tend to
Mm-hmm.
like not want to process them because they're not like accepted,
Acceptable. Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
is like so annoying. But one that I tune into it so much is jealousy. And there's so much
Yeah.
shame around it. But
Yes.
I catch myself when I see people winning and I'm like, I'm feeling because I think jealousy and envy, we don't want to get to envy. So
Yeah.
envy is that you didn't process the jealousy.
Yes, exactly.
Jealousy is good.
Yes.
Jealousy tells you, like to me, when I feel jealous, it's my body signaling possibility.
Yes. Oh, I got chills. Yes. Yes.
And so when I see my friends, when I see people I don't know, when I just like witness something that I'm like, I mean, dichotomy
Yeah.
of like, I feel happy for them. And at the same time, there's like, ooh, this element of like, ¿por qué yo no type thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what, body? This is just signaling that it's possible. And the
Yeah.
fact that I get jealous means that I have a desire for it and I need to like take action on it.
Well, I love this because, ¿por qué yo no? Like, why not me? It's actually a very important question. It's going to reveal to you exactly what you're not doing to be at that level
Yes.
or to have that thing or to feel that way. And it's a humble question, but if you're willing to listen,
Yes. Keyword.
I love that you are, talking about the body wisdom because that's so key. We don't stop enough to listen to our body and that I'm big on that because you watch my TED Talk and you know that listening to our body and tuning into it is so key. But it's just like we just move through, suppress it and shame that part of us that's showing us the possibility, and so we never get there. And so I love that you're showing us the path because it is a path. And I remember my dad has this saying every time somebody does something amazing, he's like, por ahí vamos todos. And
Yes.
and so what I've taught my daughters is whenever you feel jealousy, it's like, that's for me.
Mm-hmm.
it can be done, you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
or someone like me can do.
Exacto.
So
Exacto.
it's like, I love that you share that. Yeah, all of these emotions are just so key in helping us know exactly what our potential is and tuning into, just like you said, possibility. I love that. Possibility.
Hmm. That's one of my favorite words, possibility.
Beautiful.
Well, let's take a quick coffee break because this conversation is so good. We just went right through it.
Sabrosura pa' ti que.
So you don't drink coffee.
No,
Tell us about it. Why not? You don't need it.
I don't need it, and that's great. But when you grow up in a slum and coffee is all you drink.
Oh,
Yeah, and it's like there are days in which, especially in the Dominican Republic, where coffee it's a staple.
claro.
It's like a foundational piece of our economy.
Lo traes en la sangre.
Claro, yeah. But like you have café for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, and then for breakfast, and then for lunch, and then for dinner. Then it's kind of like how you link a smell, the sense of smell, like the olfactory glands are just so linked to our emotional
So
body.
linked.
And so for me, that's what it represented. And then I started to see my grandma had headaches whenever she didn't have her coffee. And then I had all of these layers of beliefs and memories and states. So yeah, there was a point in my life where the smell of coffee just made me nauseous. And
Wow.
I remember starting my business and meeting with clients at Starbucks and putting cinnamon on my nose.
Para no leer. Oh my
Para no
God.
oler el café. And then, eventually I can smell it now, but I still don't like to drink it.
Nadie en tu casa toma café.
No.
Wow. But I think the context is really important that you just gave us because
Yeah.
it also shows how acknowledging and honoring whatever's happening is really important. I love this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I am drinking coffee, my friend.
See, I'm drinking water.
Okay. Do you have a beverage of choice that you drink or is it siempre agua?
Oh my goodness.
Tecito?
Tecito and chocolate. My
Chocolate.
grandma lived in a village, remote village in Bonao, which is like probably 4 hours from where I grew up.
Wow.
And I only saw her a few times, but she was the most loving, warm, just motherly person I ever met. And she taught me not only how to make chocolate caliente, but like cacao. It
Wow.
was a plantation of cacao. And then she taught me the whole process of making the cacao bar so that we can then have hot chocolate together. So it's my go-to. It's my depression drink. It's my comfort drink. It's my everyday drink.
I love this. I
Yeah.
love it. Chocolatito. Bueno, conmigo, I'm drinking my regular mushroom coffee, but I have my in my señora era, my in my señora era mug from
Yeah.
Artelexia, which I went and I got it. It's really cute.
I had already asked you about it because it's just so cute.
Yeah.
And my water here
Ah,
is Elayna Fernandez, and it has the logo of the Positive Mom. But I am very, very adamant to add my accent mark in
yes.
everything. It's like I
Total.
demand it. I also correct people when they say my name wrong.
Good. Sí,
Yeah,
porque yo creo que te
so
dicen,
many names. Alina, Elena, Elena. Yeah. And I'm like,
sí,
Elayna.
say it right.
Well, the thing is, I don't feel connected if you're calling me
Claro, it's not
by
your
a name that's
name.
not mine. So
Totally.
if I don't want to be friends, then I'm probably not gonna correct you.
So tune into that, my friends. All right, let's get back to the show because we still have a lot to talk about. Oh my gosh.
Sabrosura pa' tu que.
I do want to give you your flowers. I think I want to take some time to give you your flowers because you did help me. I hired you to coach me on a speech that I
That was
did.
so fun, so fun.
And I want to tell you that after I gave that, so it was keynote speaking. And after I finished, the regional director, like the big person at the event, came up to me and he was like, this is not the first time you do this, right? Y yo así de, it depends. Why are you asking? And he was like, it was great. I loved it. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
I'm
thanks.
so proud of you.
Well, it's also your work. So I think my win was our win because you helped me with it so much. And it wouldn't have gone the way it did if you hadn't come in the picture.
Thank you. Thank you for trusting me, but also, it's that desire to improve, willingness to be coached, and also openness to receive feedback, and then the action to implement the feedback. So there are so many layers of acknowledgement for you.
Mm,
And I think, we forget those things.
we do.
Yeah. So, it was like one tiny part me, and then you had to go to all of these layers of trusting someone, trusting yourself, trusting the process. So I think
Yeah.
it's really great to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Well, thank you for being a great coach because it's
Okay.
also, I think, like I've hired so many coaches, and for me as a coach as well, it's good. You do really good work.
Thank you, Pam. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry.
To bring it back to your story, let's talk about your poems because you want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So we've been talking a lot about emotions and we've been talking about words. And you've shared being in the tunnel and existing in that parallel of being happy and at the same time going into the room and going back into the darkness.
Yeah.
And so, how did you discover that words allowed you to process?
That was an intuitive just move and it started, I think that it started when I was born.
Mm,
Because, one of the things that everybody used to tell about me is like how I started speaking full sentences at 6 months.
mírala. You
Yeah,
couldn't wait to talk.
I couldn't wait to talk. And that talking obviously got me into a lot of trouble.
Mm.
Still does. And I think my parents enrolling me in school at 2.5 years old. I started to write very early, and that was the only safe space that I had to actually share what I was writing. And because my parents weren't religious and my grandma gave me this Bible, I used to write it in the Bible and every little, blank space and just write all of these things and I have three words that I always say about myself and how I was perceived. It was dramática, trágica, y emocional.
Wow.
And so those were the three words, and those were the I would say the spaces that I tuned into when I opened my Bible at night and everybody was asleep, and I could be dramática and I could be emotional and I could be just as tragic as I wanted to be. And so it was my inner niña that discovered that tool. And one of the things that happened is that I traded this because I started to see that was unacceptable, and that if I wanted to survive in life and be acceptable, I had to smile. And I remember reading How to Make Friends and Influence People.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, you got to smile and you don't speak about problems, be positive all the time.
Yeah.
And, all of these things that were just really, I would say, where the darkness came from. Because as long as I was writing, I felt a sense of, I would say I was in charge of my life and I was in charge of my emotions and I have had a safe space. But then I started to write positive thinking and positive quotes and have all this, beautiful journals. And, I was popular for my handwriting, which you can relate because your handwriting is just so beautiful. And
Thank you.
and so it was just like I forgot that tool until I decided to start my blog. That's when I, brought it back out, just I call it my notebook filled with suicidal thoughts and thorns and bats.
Yes.
That's what I call it. And so when I started writing on my blog and started to, and I was, experiencing homelessness at that time with Alicia and Alyssa, my oldest too. That's when I realized again that my inner child was right all along, that I needed to have an outlet to express these emotions and that it was okay. So I started writing in Spanish again, just like I did when I was a little girl. And it wasn't until I think it was in 2002 no, 2022 when I started to write in English because my daughter wanted to join a poetry challenge. And I was just so terrified. Like, I don't know how to write poetry in English. Like, this is weird. And like the kind of poetry that I write is not very pretty. And
Mm.
so it was a process of, am I really going to write this? And am I going to ever show it to anyone? And then when I published it, it was just so, oof, I can't even express how liberating it was for my inner self, but
Mhm.
also how just incredible it was to receive those comments and those messages from the readers in saying how they felt the same way or how a certain poem resonated with them. And sometimes for reasons that I didn't even think
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
because it was very intentional for me that I would have a little bit of teaching because I can't help myself. and prompts for people to also express their own emotion, maybe write their own poetry, maybe just process what they just read. And so that was intentional, but the lessons that people gleaned from this were just so unexpected. And I just felt really great about having the courage and making the decision to publish it. And now, I don't know where I would be without my poems, without just relying on the written word to process and make sense of the world. Because no matter how great life looks or how many accomplishments you get or anything like that, there's always a layer. Something comes up,
Mhm.
and then you got to go back to that wounded part and process it and validate it. And again, give it what I said, the three pillars of compassion, which is attention, recognition, and validation.
Mm.
So when you give that to yourself, then you're able to give that to others. But when
Love
we
that.
shame ourselves for our pain that we feel, then we're going to do that the same for other people. We're going to bypass it. We're going to invalidate it. We're going to, almost shame people. I call it motivational shame.
Yes.
Shame people for feeling something that's natural or for thinking something that just comes up. Like, I didn't ask to have suicidal thoughts. It 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 was just the the words of the people around me became the voices in my head,
Mhm.
and they're there. Sometimes they need some attention and they need a voice.
One of the ways that you process these voices is through poetry.
Yeah.
How loud are the voices now and how do you manage them?
They get really loud still. And so when they're loud, I know that I have to write. I know that I have to stop doing everything. I know that I also, you know, and I used to feel shame about this, and I'm grateful that I'm modeling for people that there's no shame in feeling suicidal, um, and in asking for help. But here's the deal: sometimes you're gonna get that you're too dramatic, tragic, and emotional.
Hmm.
And so I started to understand that number one, because there's so much in my voice, like you started to see it, I got emotional and I started to lose my voice a little bit. And so when I am in that deep pit of darkness, it's hard for me to speak. So I couldn't like call someone. So I discovered that there was a chat
Mm-hmm.
988. That's so hard for me to say it together. 988.
8
When I discovered that there was a chat that I could actually type to someone live, there
Yeah.
was a safe space, an anonymous place. I cannot even tell you how many times I found myself where I just wanted to voice those parts and say it to someone who would just validate, pay attention, and recognize how I was coping with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are my two go-to places. And I allow myself to just know that this is part of who I am and to accept it and to share it with the world because there are parts of me that feel so much joy and my smile it's big and I live life out loud and there are parts that say I'm done.
Yeah.
It's too much. I can't go on. And so those parts are as much a part of me as the other parts, and they have a place. They send me a message, just, as you were sharing earlier. They send me a message that there's something that needs to shift. And instead of shaming them and suppressing them like I used to before, now I say, thank you. And I
Mm-hmm.
talk to parts. I know it sounds weird, but
It's real. We have different
it's
parts of
real.
ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, you know what? Thank you. Thank you for letting me know, for trying to keep me safe. Yeah, I need to rest more. Or, yes, that situation is not for me, whatever it is, and when it feels like it's too much. And so, knowing how to cope
Mm.
and process it and having the audacity, but really just a choice
Yeah.
to ask for help and to look for those safe spaces where I wouldn't be invalidated, like, oh, but you have such a good
Get
life.
over it.
Oh, yeah, but just think an affirmation or pray, or have you read this book, or
Yes.
this is a good quote that helps me get through it, or whatever it is. But just that validation and for everybody who's listening, validation sounds like, yeah, that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Oof, that's awful. What? I can't believe it. Ah, what? Whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, just
It's real.
validating that it's real.
Yeah.
We don't even have to say anything because you don't know what it's like. And you might, saying I'm sorry, well, like it's not your fault.
Right.
But if you just sit and provide that attention and that presence, and if you want to learn, those crisis counselors can give you a really good training just by how they listen. And you can actually chat with them, and you could call them too if you can do that. It's just easier for me to chat. And you can actually select, no, I don't have suicidal thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
just going through a hard time. And so just knowing that that's available, oh my goodness, I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah.
And yeah, whenever I feel that sense of overwhelm, rather than being strong and thinking, oh, it's going to go away. I am proactive now, and I take time off to write or to chat with someone.
I'm actually trained in suicide prevention, and I almost became a suicide prevention hotline.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's
Not
really
surprised. Not surprised.
I chose not to because it required it's a volunteer. I don't have the bandwidth. And however, one of the things that I learned is to be direct
Yeah.
to all of the things that we've been talking about. People sometimes the validation comes from acknowledging, are you thinking suicidal thought? Like you just have to be, are you thinking about suicide? That's the question.
Yes.
And if the answer is yes, then if it's a friend, I've done this with friends all the time.
Yeah.
When like a friend is like, oh, I'm having a day. Are you having suicidal thoughts? And like sometimes people get like, and I'm like, well, I need to know because if you are, then we need to take different actions. If
Yes.
not, then we talk in a different way. And
Because it
so,
removes the shame of it.
yes, yes,
Like, okay, are you drinking coffee? Are you having suicidal thoughts? It's a normal thing that we experience all the time. And I'm in awe of you. You're amazing.
thank you. Well, thank you for being so open to talk about this. To me, it's something that I I think we need to learn to honor all of the feelings, especially because I have someone in my family who actually completed suicide. And so when people come to me with feelings, all right, let's talk about all of the feelings because there's no shame for anyone,
Mm.
you
Hmm.
know? If you're thinking about, and I have experienced my own suicidal thoughts. And so one of the things that I think it's important to remind ourselves is that it's stronger to ask for help. That's a big sign of strength. And
Yes.
sometimes that takes a lot.
Yeah.
And to your point, like if you lose your voice, then what's another way to seek for support?
Yeah.
Because I mean, that 988, ya no puedo decirla tampoco.
Y contar
El
yo.
988 is a great resource that I think not, you don't have to be fully in a deep, dark tunnel. You can just be having a hard time and be like, I don't know where to go from here.
Yeah.
And it's free.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Exactly.
sharing all of it.
No, thank you too. Oh my gosh. And for sharing, it's so sad that it is brave to say these things.
Mm,
So I just look forward for a time where this is not a secret. This is
yes,
not a brave thing to do. It's just a thing to do.
because we're
And we're
human.
yes, and we're all trained to be a safe person for someone we love.
Yes, to hold that space. Elayna, tell us all the places and spaces where we can find you.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, thepositivemom.com, my blog, my 20-year-old baby. Also Amazon.
Best-selling author.
Thank you. And online, I'm everywhere at The Positive Mom. So if there is a platform, trust me, I have that handle.
Yes, I concur. Um, what's next for you? What's a project that you're excited about that you want to talk about?
Well, I'm launching the Gifts of Pain Volume 2 next
Nice.
month. That's really exciting. And I just announced today Volume 3. So
Oh,
that's going to be really exciting because that's my passion, to use storytelling to process all of those emotions and painful memories, especially that we want to heal, and also to see what pains we received, what gifts we received from the pain, so that we can give hope to other people who might be going through the same thing. So it's just really a labor of love. And I
mm,
love I have 31 authors in each series, in each volume of the series, and working with just such inspiring people. And that's another thing, like someone crawling themselves out of painful situations is inspiring
yeah,
and heartbreaking at the same time.
yeah.
And it's like, oh my goodness, I wish they didn't have to go through that, but thank you for sharing it so that I can see that light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm really excited about that.
Where can people learn more about it?
Well, on my website, The Gifts of Pain, under books, you can go there and there's a button that says Become a Best-Selling Author.
Yay.
And it's also on my Instagram bio right now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Last few questions.
Yes.
Um, what's your remedio?
Oh my gosh. So I had to think long and hard for this one.
Because I said no Vicks.
Yes, because Vicks is the one. That's my favorite. I'm like, Pam, come on.
I know. It would just be filled with Vicks. Everyone is Vicks.
It's so, so silly. But you know, leche con bija is what I ended on. I don't know if you've had that one
I
before.
don't think so, but tell me what it is.
Okay. Yeah, so bija, we call it bija in the Dominican Republic, but in other countries they call it annatto seed or achiote.
Ah, milk?
Yeah, with milk. And now I do it with almond milk or coconut milk because I'm vegan now. But when I was a child, if you had anemia, if you had a bruise, if you had like inflammation of any type, if you had pink eye, I mean, it was all of these things
Para
that,
todo.
yeah, and you
Huh.
drank that and you felt it and you know, it worked. It has so many amazing properties, just La Vija itself, which is
Ah,
that it's like it looks like a little piranha.
see,
And it has those seeds and they're red. So it's used for coloring because it's red. And so you add it to, do you know what locrio is?
no.
It's like rice with pollo, arroz con pollo, but then it's like red.
Sí, en México tenemos cochinita pibil y achiote se usa con cochinita pibil, pero no
Okay.
con leche. That's a new
Yeah,
one.
con leche is remedio only, but you can use it for cooking all of the things, and then all of the dolencias or dolamas we call it.
Hola.
But also if you have a scar, it helps you heal it. There's another thing. Oh, it has vitamins. So it has vitamin A and D. So yeah, I totally recommend it as a remedio. I haven't had it in a little bit because I have to bring the dry seeds from the
Yeah.
DR. I haven't found it
I mean,
here.
you're in Texas.
Yeah.
No?
Mm-mm. No,
Interesting.
I mean I found it before, but very rare. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I mean, the way that I think about it is like in a paste.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, we use it as powder and seeds. And so with
Huh.
the seeds, you sofríes, like you put your little oil and then you put the seeds and then you put your garlic and yeah. But for the leche, you boil it with the leche or you add the powder to warm milk.
T- Huh. All right. That's a very new one. What's your quote or
Yeah.
mantra that you live by?
Well, I was thinking I have so many. I'm not against quotes or mantras. It's just only when people are in pain.
Yes, for
But
sure.
but Dr. Gabor Mate, he's one of my mentors. He says trauma is not what happens to you. It's what happens inside of you as a
Mm,
result of what happened to you.
yes.
Yeah, I love that one. I quote it all the time.
It's so good.
Yeah.
What's your productivity tip, trick, or tool that you want to share with us?
You know, I am maybe people are gonna not like this, but I am not a fan of to-do lists.
How do you get so much done?
Well, because to-do lists are like things that I dread. Like when I look at it, most people are like, "Oh, I get such a rush when I check off." My brain, the way it works, is like I focus on the ones that are not done. It's like, oh, I
Oh,
checked this one, and especially as a single mom and coach and
siempre hay
business,
más que hacer.
so much. So I calendar instead. And so when it's
Mm,
calendared, I have a space. It's like I haven't done it, but I have a space in which I'm going to do it. And also, then I do reviews in my calendar because I think your calendar is a transformational tool. Because when you look at your calendar, you see what your priorities are. Like you can, and I calendar everything, time with my kids, self-care, writing, of course,
Nice.
everything that I need to do. And it's like, oh my gosh, this week it looks like I'm not sleeping enough, or I don't have water breaks, or whatever it is. And basically, it's going to look like if I said I'm writing my memoir, by the way,
Yay.
if I said I'm going to write on my memoir and it's not on my calendar, I know that I got to make space for it. So it helps you have a balanced life. And also, it's not like a long list, like a Cinderella size to-do list, but it's more like, okay, I want to do this, and when can I do it? And even if it's in 2027, but I know
It's
that
on there.
it's somewhere and it's not weighing on my brain.
Wow. I've not heard that method. I like it. And I love that it works for you.
Thank you. I hope it works for someone else out there.
Let us know, listeners. Let us know. And the last question that I recently came up with is, how do you take a restorative pause?
I love that. Ooh, so good. I didn't used to do this ever before because I was in the push and push mentality. But when I started to be a single mom and my kids were 2 and 3, I remember locking myself in my bathroom because it was just like, have to do something. And I started taking 5-minute vacations. And sometimes
Wow.
2 minutes, but 5 minutes was kind of my goal. And so I would close my eyes and I imagined that I was in Samaná, which is a peninsula in the Dominican Republic. And I would, wear my favorite bathing suit and drink coconut water and just feel all of the emotions. And for me, that visualization calms my nervous system, helps me just feel connected to nature, which I love, and just feel that sense of rest. And it's so restorative, and it's like a reset button for me.
Yeah. I love the 5-minute vacations. I'm going to start quoting you now.
Love it. See, I say I
So
love
good. I know. We can't help it.
We just love it.
We just love it. Well, Elayna, thank you so much for coming to Café con Pam. This was so fun.
Oh, thank you, Pam. I know that the wait was worth it.
Yes, and let's bring you back.
I would love that.
Yeah.
I'm just so excited and so grateful for the work that you do. Thank you
Oh,
for what
thank
you do
you.
for our community and for the listeners. You're amazing.
Thank you for all the things that you do. You're a mentor of mine. You're one of my teachers, so thank you for all of that.
I love you.
Sabrosura pa' ti que.
All right, listeners, that was my conversation with Elayna. I really think this was a masterclass. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Of course, screenshot and tag. Let us know what you enjoyed, what called you the most from this episode. There's so many nuggets. I don't even know which one to call out. Elayna has just such a way to hold space, to also take space. She really is awesome. Entonces, I really hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Y bueno, if this is your first time, primero que nada, bienvenido, bienvenida, bienvenida. Welcome to Café con Pam. Espero que regreses. This is your casita. I hope you pulled up a chair, brought your little warm beverage or cold, and decided to stay. Make sure to subscribe or follow, depending on where you are tuning in from, so that you are aware when the next episodes come. And also because that helps you, that helps us. Follow at Café con Pan Podcast on all the places and spaces. Of course, social media, you can tag us and let us know what resonated the most with the episode. If you feel called, of course, please leave us a review. Drop a comment if you're on the YouTube. Let us know what your thoughts are. Apparently, people on YouTube have a lot of thoughts, and not all of them are positive, which is kind of interesting. Pero bueno, let's stay connected on the socials, of course. Check out cafeconpam.com. And I've been talking about El Mercadito, so go get on the waiting list. cafeconpam.com/mercadito. And right now, we are, as of this recording, we're still on waiting list. Pero I am really working on a powerful option for you to show up on Café con Pam in a really fun way. cafeconpam.com/mercadito. And listeners, bueno, como siempre, Stay shining.
Sabrosura pa' ti que